Well, hello, my friends. We meet again. It has been a while. Where should we begin? Today, we're going to be talking about the very early days of the 7-string guitar, which of course revolves around the legendary Steve Vai and of course Ibanez themselves. However, it's not about Steve Vai's solo album, 1990's Passion and Warfare. Rather, we're going to be taking a deeper, longer look at your mom's favorite band, Whitesnake, and their 1989 record, Slip of the Tongue, which is actually the first metal debatable album with a 7-string on it. I recently saw this short clip of Steve Vai talking about this album.
Matter of fact, there's something very interesting about that record is that's when I got the first 7-string guitar. So that record, if you listen, that's the first rock record that has a 7-string guitar throughout the whole thing.
And it made me want to deep dive further into this album and see what all the fuss is about and see what the first 7-string album sounds like. I just find it funny that a Whitesnake record of all sorts led directly to this very cheap 7-string Ibanez Geo being in my possession here. Of course, who would have thought just adding an extra 5 notes to a guitar would cause such a crazy change to the sonic aesthetic of metal as a whole? And of course, who would have even thought that the first 7-string metal record would be a hair metal album from 1989? It's funny, I remember my mom actually had this CD, of course, back in the day, along with a few others like Alice in Chains, the self-titled, Nevermind, and the Black Album. You know, little did I know that 20-some years later, I'd be writing a video essay about this same Whitesnake album that I listened to in the back of her car. Miss you, Mom. Thanks for showing me great music, and make sure to give your mom a call here, boys. Anyways, though, remember to hit that like button as it really helps the video out and the channel more than I think you think it does. Hit that subscribe button if you want to see some more weird, notable metal albums. And I just want to thank all my YouTube members and Patreon supporters. Thank you guys so very much. You guys are the OGs. I also stream every single Friday, so come and hang out with me there. But that is enough self-shilling. Let's get to the 7 strings and David Coverdale's crooning voice. Now, I'm not going to cover the entire history of the 7-string guitar, nor Whitesnake in this video, but I'll give just a brief gestalt of the relationship that Ibanez and Steve Vai have to 7 strings. Also, yes, I know 7 strings existed before the Ibanez and Steve Vai, but they had like another higher string and they hadn't really caught on yet. They're not really the classic 7-string that we know and love now. So go ahead and make your angry comments right now. So to make a long story short, Steve Vai by the mid 80s was already an extremely successful and influential guitar player, having joined David Lee Roth's solo band, having played with Frank Zappa, as well as being part of Yngwie Malmsteen's previous band, Alcatraz. Steve would link up with Ibanez in 1985, and by 1987, Ibanez and Vai would release The Gem, which in addition to looking ever so cool, contained a lot of features that we sort of consider to be standard on guitars today, like 24 frets on a guitar with 2 humbuckers. And all the Gem features would eventually filter down to the rest of the RG lineup, and of course, right to a lot of the guitar world as a whole. Now, in 1989, after leaving David Lee Roth's band, Vai will get a call from David Coverdale, lead singer of perhaps the ultimate cock-rocking hair metal band, Whitesnake. And don't worry, I know Whitesnake is arguably not a metal band, but they kinda are. They really straddle that line. So Vai agreed to join and then began recording his parts for what would then become Whitesnake's 8th studio album, Slip of the Tongue. However, around the same time, Vai reached out to Ibanez, as I guess he just simply thought it'd be cool to have a 7-string. Ibanez would work on it for a few months, then deliver to Steve a prototype of what eventually would become the glorious, the revolutionary Ibanez Universe series, which would be released to the world after the release of Slip of the Tongue in 1990, actually. So this album predates the official release of the 7-string. Now, Vai, of course, would also use the same 7-string on several different songs on his 1990 album Passion and Warfare. As well, he would also play this 7-string, his brand new sparkling 7-string, on Whitesnake's 1990 Slip of the Tongue World Tour, which I'm sure potentially millions of people had their first sight of a 7-string guitar on that tour. I'm sure a lot of young musicians took some notes here. So Vai himself declared that Slip of the Tongue is the first modern 7-string record, as he played what sounds to be the entirety of his guitar parts on his custom 7-string Ibanez.
And they made me this guitar and I got it and I took the first prototype and I recorded the whole Whitesnake. The one song that I didn't use it.
So let's go through the album here and see what exactly the first 7-string metal album ever brought to the table. But I have to get this out of the way, guys. If you are expecting crazy 7-string riffage, I really think you'll be disappointed. There's no low chugs here, right? A 7-string guitar is fundamentally a regular guitar with 5 extra notes below the normal range of a guitar, right? That still leaves 4 octaves above those extra notes, right? So almost all this album is simply played like a normal guitar. Although there are quite a few parts here and there which use the 7-string. I would say it's not like a defining feature of this album at all, right? For that, you would have to wait until 1993's Covenant by Morbid Angel. I think that's probably like the first real use of it in the modern sense. 1994 is Awake by Dream Theater. And of course, right, shortly followed by Korn's self-titled. That would be the real genesis of the 7-string. But here on Whitesnake, it was the official subtle debut of it, I guess you could say. So in addition to Steve Vai and his Ibanez and David Coverdale, he does the singing, of course. The rest of the members in Whitesnake in this era are Adrian Vandenberg, who himself is an incredible guitarist and co-wrote most of the album with Coverdale here, as well as the legendary Tommy Aldridge and Rudy Sarzo, both of whom had previously played for Ozzy Osbourne before joining Whitesnake. So a pretty star-studded lineup here on this album. But enough of that preamble, let's get to the album itself here, boys. So now the first thing I'll say about this album is that it's an incredibly horny album. I mean, just listen to the lyrics from this song, Cheap and Nasty here. Quote, "I get so excited, babe, when I'm invited to ride in your limousine. You drive it every day, burn it every night. I wonder how you keep it so clean. Smooth accelerator, you got me so loose. You keep your motor running till I run out of juice." You're cheap and nasty. All you want to do is give it up, give it up. Cheap and nasty. Come on and do the dirty with me. Woo! I mean, that's like about as subtle. That's about as subtle as a sledgehammer, but I think this overt bravado and, for lack of a better word, gooner music was all the rage at the time. I don't know, man. This must be like the absolute peak of that cock rock sound. In fact, now that I think about it, this might be the most 80s sounding glam metal album ever produced. And well, you know, who am I kidding here? It looked like so much goddamn fun. Honestly, I went into this album kind of expecting to hate it, but I was just won over by how authentically 80s it is in all its excess. Even the guitar has an extra string. I'm just so incredibly jealous of all those who are around for this era of music and life in general. Just seems like such a fun party. There's the 1990 Donington concert, just seems like such a ride. I'm just so jealous. And I guess a lot of my criticisms here could come off as like sour grapes or, you know, millennial whining about overt boomer, you know, sexist lyrics or whatever, but that's not what I'm here for, right? You can have very horny and insatiable lyrics, but it doesn't have to be so crude, I guess. I don't know. I'm just jealous. It looks sick. It looks like a fun time. I wish I was there. So now the album begins with the grand opening and title track, which is Slip of the Tongue. Now this album on the release or the re-release actually has a different track order than the old CD that my mom had. So just for simplicity's sake, we will use the track list, which is currently on YouTube Music for streaming. So we'll just clear that confusion. Now then, so Slip of the Tongue, the title track, is the first song on this album, and it's actually a really great song. It's very groovy and progressive. I love all the little guitar fills that Steve or maybe Adrian do during the song too. Really, really great stuff. This just feels like 80s excess at its peak, right? It's just so grand and yeah, it's just there. Right off the bat, I have to say that the drums on this album sound incredible. Extremely punchy and fat with just that perfect amount of gated reverb. I love it, especially the ride cymbal and the kick and the snare. Sounds excellent. Now, of course, right, we're here for the 7th string, and we actually get the 7th string being used for the first time here as well. Just after the first chorus, you can hear Steve Vai doubling the riff that is being played on that low string. You can see him playing it at the Donington 1990 concert. Pretty cool little nifty use of the 7th string here on what actually would be the first rock/metal song ever with the modern 7th string. Just, you know, Just listen to history, people. Here it is. This song is also just insatiably horny as well, right? Even the instrumentation and arrangement seem to suggest some sort of rhythmic innuendos. But you know, I do have to say the lyrics are a lot better and more subtle, I suppose, than some of the songs that follow it here. Still though, great track with some really groovy riffs, a big grand chorus, and some great solos. Great singing from David Coverdale, by the way, right? This song here feels very lush, full, with lots of layers and enjoyable moments. It gets
Yeah, buddy. It's on now.
from me here, boys. Next up, we have Kittens Got Claws, which I just have to say, why is David Coverdale howling at the start of the song if it's about a cat with claws? Oh, I get it. The kitten is a cat with claws, and David is like a dog with a bone. Sorry. Anyways, this is a pretty typical 80s glam metal, rockin' bluesy song with some really just insatiable lyrics. Was the 80s really like this? Can anyone confirm? Was it this horny? I will say there's one decently clever line, which I remember even from when I was like 13 years old listening to it here. And here it is. Again, it's pretty crude, but at least it requires some thought and gives some good imagery. I had to think about that one for a little bit when I first heard it, right? I also like how David shows his British side, comparing this lady's beauty to a Jaguar XJS, which almost certainly has to be the one and only time an XJS was ever mentioned in the lyrics of a song. Maybe ever, to be honest. Maybe not even in rap, maybe ever. The song is pretty decent, chorus is pretty enjoyable, and it carries good momentum to it. No discernible 7-string moments here on this song, sadly. But man, this ending, bro, like, I can't. I give this one a...
I'll do the hardcore stuff. Don't worry about that. J-Rock, let's get it on.
Cheap and Nasty follows it, and honestly, man, it may be even hornier than Kittens Got Claws. This just seems to be like a kind of worse, more degrading, and less rockin' version of Kittens Got Claws, to be honest. No 7-string action here, unfortunately, either. Really, on this album, Steve Vai's use of that 7-string is very subtle and used sparingly, right? Gotta say, the bridge of gang shouts shouting cheap and nasty is just like so shameless that you can't help but enjoy it. Although, I think I'd rather just listen to Kitten Got Claws. It's just like a better version of this song. The song gets
What is that? Oh my god.
Now You're Gone is next up, and to me, this really sort of wins me back from the two previous songs that I thought were kind of too... I don't know, just too sexed up, I guess. You can tell this is a much more personal song for David, and thus comes off as much more authentic and enjoyable sounding, in my opinion. He isn't wailing at the top of his lungs about entering limousines and other such metaphors about sex here. He sings basically the entire song in his lower register, which is a really nice change. I love his lower register. It's so just smooth. It's a nice sentimental song about losing someone you love. So maybe we could turn back the hands of time. Maybe we could get... Nice chord progressions and enjoyable solo. Overall, a very, very enjoyable and above average glam metal ballad. Although the low B string is once again not used here either. It gets
I just think they're neat.
for me.
When I look back on everything I've done, I know you must have cried away.
Now, the fifth track of the album is really, really a killer song in my opinion. The Deeper the Love is the name of the track, and the verse chord progression is just really, really beautiful, and it just feels so warm.
So when the sun goes down and those nights go colder,
No 7-string action here, but the solo is excellent, I must say. And the lyrics of the song are just really beautiful and heartfelt. Apparently David Coverdale had been sitting on the song for quite a while. He mentions this in the Whitesnake Revisited, where he goes back and looks at some of the home footage he did, which is a cool video. And he said that he was sitting on the song for quite a long time before Adrian came up with the verse progression for it. So gotta thank Adrian for that verse. It's really, really beautiful. One of the best on the album for sure. And the lyrics of the song are just really beautiful and heartfelt. Just a great, great track. Although, you know, I could do without David's ad-libs at the end of the song. Like, David, we know you are a great singer. You don't need to convince us with all these crazy ad-libs at the end. I don't know, that also seems to be like an 80s thing, these crazy vocal acrobatics at the end, ad-libs, probably like a carryover from Led Zeppelin or something like that. Do you guys like these type of ad-libs? Just let me know. I think they're just completely unnecessary, but who am I to judge? I'm just a guy talking to a camera in his basement. This song is excellent.
Yeah, buddy. It's on now.
Great stuff. Judgment Day is next, and I just love the way this song starts with like the double kick and snare drum. It's just so blunt and in your face. It's honestly sick, and it's a great change from some of the slower intros that the rest of this album has. It just really stands out to me. I love it. To me, this song is the highlight of the album, and we get all the great Whitesnake dynamics here. Huge sex-laden guitar riffs, epic Led Zeppelin-esque choruses, and the verse sections are just, this song is fantastic, man. I am also certain we get some 7-string action here as well, with Steve Vai layering it under some of the riffs later on when the song turns heavy. Cool lyrics as well. Reminds me a lot of that one particular Led Zeppelin song, which I can't play here, but you know the one. This song gets a
just so lovely. I'm really loving the sound
from me.
Do you remember standing on the shore?
Sailing Ships is up next, and honestly, I also love this song. It's a very sweet and emotional song, complete with an extremely good slow burn to crescendo in it.
Take me with you, take me far away.
Great stuff, and I love how bittersweet and warm this song sounds, especially with that sitar that's layered in the opening acoustic section under the verse too.
What's up ahead? For the storm has just begun.
I love the chord progressions in this song. I love the message here. I just love it. This song is excellent. The chorus is also very, very good. I really love how David sings it in his crooner low voice twice before the last 2 times it's played. He springs right up into his high range.
Take me with you, take me far away. Take me with you, take me far away.
And I love how he sort of syncopates his lyrics differently. Very, very cool. An excellently written, performed, and produced song. Easily right up there with Judgment Day here for me. But sadly, no 7 strings here either. This song gets a
just so lovely. I'm really loving the sound
from me. Wings of the Storm is the 8th track here, and this one feels like the most metal of all the songs here. Great opening riff that reminds me a lot of an Ozzy Osbourne riff, which is very, very cool. And later on in the song, Steve Vai actually layers that riff an entire octave down by using that low 7th string. So really, really cool use of that 7th string here, and it makes it sound very, very thick and chunky in that section. Overall, really solid and enjoyable glam metal track. Great singing, and it's a little bit faster on tempo, which by now is a nice change to keep the album interesting. And comparing the Wings of a Storm to the Grand Throes of Love, it's a great metaphor, and honestly, another really, really quite enjoyable track. Cool bridge solo section too, which sees the band dip briefly into like this Phrygian mode sounding part. Really sounds like something which could have been on Steve Vai's solo album, Passion Warfare, later on. Him and Adrian trade off solos. Yeah, great song. It gets
Yeah, buddy. It's on now.
from me. Now, slowpoke music follows it up, and this one seems to be a very deliberate throwback, I guess, to like the more sensational, bluesy earlier days of Whitesnake, which, I'll be honest with you guys, I don't really enjoy too much. I'm not the biggest fan of like bluesy sounding music. But this is like another incredibly horny song with a few gem lines such as, quote, "With your sweet French perfume and that criminal walk, you know you'd melt my ice cream with your body talk." Kind of a tough one, but I think this next one's worse. Quote, "Well, you move so fine, like stepping on glass." Interesting metaphor there. "And when you give me that smile, I see lightning flash, east and west, north and south. Oh, babe, you're so hot, I'm gonna melt in your mouth." End quote. This was a 38-year-old man singing it at this point too, just so you know. More horny, rhythmic innuendos in this song too. And it's just a pretty stale, overly horny 80s rock jam, in my opinion. No 7-string action here either. And David's ending ad-lib at the end is just, bro, what are you doing, man? Like, this song's a tough listen. This song gets
What is that? Oh my God.
from me. All right, on to the last song of the album, and I'm not doing any of the bonus tracks here. So just so you know, "Fool for You Loving" is actually a recording of the same song, which was previously released on Whitesnake's 1980 album, Ready and Willing. Now, I like this version better. It just has much more polish and feels much more complete. I love that post-chorus melody. It's just really, really grand and gorgeous. Love it. Honestly, this song is just like another typical 80s glam metal song, but there's nothing wrong with that. Like, I like that stuff, you know what I mean? Not too special. I'm not really sure why they bothered to re-record it. It's a decent song, don't get me wrong, but why bring it back, I guess? Maybe they needed filler. They didn't have anything else. I don't know. No 7-string action here either, but honestly, what we were expecting at this point, this song gets
I just think they're neat.
from me. But yeah, all right, so all in all, I think this album is a pretty mixed bag, to be honest. On one hand, we have about a third of these songs being incredibly horny, overly sexed up blues rock tracks, a third typical 80s glam metal songs, and the final third are these really impressive, progressive, and grandiose songs. It sort of feels like this album was unsure of what kind of record it wanted to be. It's like, we want to do this, but we have to give them more of this, which we already gave them, I guess. And on one hand, I really like the more progressive and serious tracks like Judgment Day and Sailing Ships, but when these are presented next to these songs like Cheap and Nasty, it sort of just devalues the whole thing in my mind. But at least the glam metal songs are also good. Very enjoyable album. This album gets a solid
I just think they're neat.
from me. And so I love how one clip of Steve Vai talking about this being the first 7-string record led me to reliving a lot of these songs that my mom had enjoyed too, right? Diligently listening for any sort of 7-string chug action, but sadly, the 7-string wasn't the showcase here of the guitar that we all wanted it to be, right? There's no low chugging here, and Steve Vai used the low B very, very sparingly, but tastefully. The parts where he does use it sound very, very good, but honestly, I think it would have been the Whitesnake tour and Steve Vai's following solo record, which really exposed the 7-string to a much wider audience. I mean, how many millions of people did Whitesnake probably play to who were like, holy shit, what is Steve Vai playing? You know what I mean? But of course, we all know it would take a few more years for guitarists to really grasp the utility of having those extra low notes at their disposal. Now, I've been Varvis. Thanks for listening and watching. If you guys have any other recommendations for unique, interesting, notable, weird metal albums in metal history, please leave them down below. I'd love to do more of these videos. I love doing this. Cheers, boys.